I'm Aryeh Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show where it's all about the W. Can you feel the excitement? The WNBA season is here. We got lots to discuss, so let's dive right in. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. Less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at Winsidr.com. If you're looking for a fun new way to enjoy the W, join Winsidr on Playback. W watch parties are the way to go. It's a fun new way to watch the games, to enjoy the WNBA community. The link is playback.tv/Winsidr. That's playback.tv/Winsidr. Glad to be here with my amazing co-host, Hoff, Rachel Galligan. If I don't embarrass Rachel on an episode, do we really have an episode? Funny little note as we enter in and we get ready for another season to start. It's been like 5, 6, 7 seasons together, Rachel. It's been pretty crazy. I wish, well, one day we'll have to release the video footage of us like in the background dancing to the intro music every episode. First of all, I want to remind everyone, I know everyone skips through the intro. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Make sure you subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Winsidr. Make sure you do it because we have a lot of really cool content there, a lot of exclusive content. For now, we give betting information, betting tips. That's not behind the paywall. That's free for everyone. At All Star, it will be going behind the paywall. So cash in on free money now. But yeah, it's great content and definitely worth the subscription. We're going to go through the power ranking in a moment, and I'm going to end my rant with one more rant, and then I'll let Rachel start talking. I want to remind the people that Winsidr is an outlet. The goal of creating Winsidr was to put together a team of people dedicated and passionate about the W. Does the whole team agree on every take that we have as individuals? No, that's not the point. The point is to grow the game. There should be disagreements, debates, and arguments in a respectful way. And our job is to grow the league by giving a platform for these hardworking individuals to not only get eyes on them and hopefully move on to bigger and better roles, but also to show the variety of opinions in covering the W. And obviously, like I said, in a respectful way and in the context of the women's basketball world. So let's go down this WNBA power ranking according to the Winsidr staff. It's been pretty fun to do these things throughout the years because I think often power rankings can be kind of skewed by national media. But let's dive in, Rachel. I'm going to run down the list. I'm going to throw the list in your face so that you can see it. It's in the chat. Oh, she's got it. Okay, never mind.
Got it.
And then let's see if we agree. There's some things I agree with, some things I don't agree with.
Well, and just so people know, this is actually a fun exercise. I know you asked me if I wanted to do this, and then it just didn't happen. So I'm actually not a part of these power rankings, at least this one. So this is kind of the first time I've had a fresh set of eyes on it. So I am glad to give you my opinion.
Rachel giving the biggest cop out before. No, I'm joking. So let's start with the obvious ones, right? Number one, number two, Las Vegas Aces. We've talked about this until the season begins, until someone dethrones the best. I don't see how, unless there's like a huge roster movement, I don't see how you can remove them from being number one. They just won the championship. They added Candace Parker and Alicia Clark and Kayla George. And removed some players who weren't providing the most in minutes or stats. So obviously Vegas, then New York, the other super team that was formed this offseason, arguably was completely formed this offseason. Then we move down. And I'm just, you know what, I'm just going to run down the whole list and then we can kind of just discuss what we disagree with and so on. Washington, Connecticut, Phoenix, Atlanta, LA, Dallas, Minnesota, Chicago, Indiana, and Seattle. If there is one team, Rachel, that you think is in the right spot, either too high or too low, which do you think it is?
is the question that I think, how can they be in the right spot if I think they're too high or
Sorry,
too
sorry, wrong spot. Wrong spot.
low? Just initial reactions. I think Minnesota's a little high. Little high. Having them at 9, I think, is really generous right now. I think Dallas at 8 seems a little bit low, but I do think the news with Diamond missing, majority of the season that we kind of heard about yesterday, I guess, makes me not hated as much. I think, let's see, I think Indiana at 11 is solid. I mean, I think you could argue from a respect standpoint and a tradition standpoint in the last few years, Seattle should go above them. I think that's pretty harsh having Seattle at 12. Not gonna
Very
lie.
much agree. I've no, but Rachel, Jewel Lloyd, as a young up and comer, like here's my thing. I'm gonna get some
You
flack for
nervous?
this. I got some. I'm gonna get some flack for this, Rachel. Answer me this: is there a single player on Indiana? If all right, I'll put it this way: if you could draft from the Seattle or the Indiana roster, who's the first player you're picking?
I don't know. It's hard for me not to really consider Nalissa Smith. I mean,
Fair, but I feel like Jewel Lloyd is the obvious choice
right,
as of
right.
now,
In
right?
terms
And
of all-star, established veteran Mamba mentality, I agree. I mean, you look at Jewel Lloyd, and yes, it's hard for me to put Nalissa Smith above her. That's for sure. I agree.
that's just why, in my opinion, if I think seeing Seattle at 12 just rubs me the wrong way. I
I
agree
think
with Dallas being below LA, honestly. Like sorry, I agree with you on those two should flip because here's my thing. Call me crazy. I feel like there's the timing also matters, right? Because Rachel, I know we agreed when Diamond DeShields got traded to Dallas, we both had many questions of how's that going to work. So for me, seeing Diamond out, while I agree she's a good player, I still have questions of the fit. So it's not like this huge, you're losing an all-star, a WNBA champion, this is going to destroy the team. It's not like a huge knock in my mind that would move them a place or two. That's just my
yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, and I love what LA's doing. I think they had a good offseason. I think, the new regime there, Kurt Miller, like it's going to get better. I mean, good lord, it can't possibly get any worse. But to have him at 7, I would flip-flop Dallas. I'd put Dallas, in that 6-7 category. Debatable with Atlanta. I mean, still a lot to be seen from Atlanta. It's promising. It looks really good, but like I kind of put Atlanta and Dallas in that same spot because of different circumstances. Like right in the middle of the pack. I think LA should drop below Dallas at this point.
What do you think about Minnesota and Chicago, especially considering now granted I will say this, the numbers were tabulated well before, no, I shouldn't say well before, soon before the preseason game. And I know it's a preseason game, there's only so much. And also this was based on before some of these cuts happened. Granted, I don't think any of the cuts, move anybody on, you know what I mean? Like I don't think who was it? Alexis Morris being cut by Connecticut dropped them from 3 to 4th, or and I'm just using her as an example.
Yeah, some of the
Or
cuts we've seen the last few days. I will say, I mean, just to put it out there, I'm very surprised at Chicago's final roster and the cutting of Kiana Traylor. I mean, again, if we're just looking at pure rookies, that one was very surprising to me. There's a lot of question marks with Chicago, just with it being such a brand new team. Sorry to cut you off, but
no, you're good. Cut me
I,
off
I
whenever.
don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I can see the logic of Minnesota kind of keeping a core together, being more consistent than a Chicago. I just think Chicago has more talent, so
Yeah.
I would flip flop Minnesota and Chicago. But back to your point, no, I don't see any cut that's like complete game changer. The biggest news, in my opinion, is Diamond missing time with Dallas. Been the biggest blow that affects a team early on that we've seen.
Fair. I would say the Isabel Harrison injury
Hurt.
definitely impacts Chicago. Luckily, happily, this has not been a off season of injury, right? Like we've had that historically. There's almost
Knock on wood.
always, yeah. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. I just feel like historically, at least over the last like 5 or so years, it's not just Stewie. It's not just Alyssa Thomas. There's other people also um, that just like during the off season have gotten overseas injuries that have impacted whatever of the the opening weekend, all of that. Um, I think in general, the really interesting thing for me is kind of talking to different people in the W space, whether it's media, whether it's players, coaches, people in the know. My dear friend Rachel Galligan.
Yeah.
um, I think the interesting aspect for one of the interesting aspects is when you look at 3 through 12, it's all about weighing a variety of different factors, right? Because like Washington, stacked roster, I do think there's some offensive question marks there. But I think it's easy you fall prey to saying, this is a very similar team to what we've seen of recently, but they're healthy. While that, in my opinion, not to be a knock against Little T, as I like to call him, Eric Thibault, but like that's a different coach. This is someone who's never been a head coach in a professional league before. And while you have the roster that I think rightfully so puts you in the number 3 spot, right? You arguably have the third or fourth or second or first best player in the world, right? Um, in Elena Deladon, the deli, she'll slice you up. And then Connecticut also, a team similarly stacked and has adjusted. And if I was sitting here with Connecticut still having Kurt Miller as coach with the roster they have now, I think I would feel more confident in it. But I just look at this and I go, the 3, 4, and 5, I really like their rosters. I question their coaching. 6 is kind of that equal balance of I like the coach, but the roster isn't there yet. And then from that point on, it's kind of just like a fluctuation of roster and a new coach, or you know what I mean? Am I even making sense?
No, you are. You are. I was going to say, I don't remember a season covering the league outside of now where I've had more question marks. Just like honestly, even from the top, like, okay, Las Vegas might be the most steady team in terms of what we can expect. I think Atlanta to some degree, we kind of know what we're going to expect. You expect some type of jump to some degree. Liberty, I mean, I know it sounds great, but like, what the hell does that look like? And that's going to take some time. They're going to have some hiccups. They're not just going to run through people. I mean, I don't think so. They will at times. Washington, as you said, massive amounts of question marks with, again, you're running it back with a design of a team, but you've got a new coach. And what does that look? Connecticut, all brand new. Phoenix, okay, they're running it back too to some degree, but like, how is it going to look? Now you're implementing an MVP caliber player back into the league. Praise God. But what does that look like with Griner back on the court and Tarazi at this stage of her career from a
But
depth?
also, and a coach that, I mean, at best
Yeah, with
was questionable last year.
the drama of last year in Phoenix was unbelievable at times. So can they shore that up? So Atlanta seems one of the more steady teams in terms of what to expect. LA, I mean, I think we know it's going to be better, but like, what does the product look like? We don't know. Dallas, you've kind of been floating in this like potential.
Wait, sorry. Back to Atlanta real quick. I just hearing you say that, it just made me realize like, can you I don't think this is a crazy world that we live in, or to think of, but like Atlanta, we do live in a crazy world. But Atlanta, like, taking too many steps forward this year just because of the uncertainty and the unsteadiness of so many of these other teams. I could very well see Atlanta being, a I'm gonna say it now. This is crazy as all hell. It's the season hasn't started, so it's now's the time. I could see them being 3 through 5
Totally. I,
seeded going in the playoffs.
I totally agree.
Like, crazy as it might sound, but they have continuity, they have steadiness, and I think the players that they've added this offseason make them a better team in the long haul. And I think that's a key thing. I know I touched on it recently on Twitter, just saying, like, I'm sorry, expanding the league is not the answer, because a very underrated aspect, in my opinion, is how teams have to operate short sightedly, because they have to go, I need to cut this player because I need to fit this 11-person roster right now, as opposed to saying, I have 3 spots or 2 spots of players that I know they're not going to play, but they can grow. And I think it's almost encapsulates the mindset of the W as a whole of, yeah, we might be past the part of like be thankful we're here, but we're still in the mindset of like are like it's almost like after an earthquake you're like, okay, has the ground stopped moving? Like, are we on steady ground now? And I think that's going to be the next growth, is going from teams having to think about very short-sighted ways to long-term ways. But that's just a whole nother
Yeah. No,
discussion.
I agree. That's a whole other rant, especially when we start talking about expansion. And I will continue to just. I mean, we're already talking about hardships. We haven't even started a season. I mean, what's up with all these hardships these last few years? And it's going to be the same thing this year. It's completely exhausting. I wish we had, you know, 13, 14 spots on the roster, but that's another rant. Yeah, going back to my point, looking at the rest of these power rankings. Yeah, I mean, it's just you could pose a question, a massive, not just, there's always questions headed into a season, right? Like, what's this look like, new team, blah blah blah, but like these are just monstrous questions. It's hard to really sit down and really have a decent idea of what even this product is going to be, let alone how are these players going to mesh. So yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing I'm feeling looking at these teams is I could go right down the line and say I have huge questions about this, I have huge questions about that. Chicago Sky, we see an end of an era, what does that look like? Indiana Fever, are they going to be able to bring this youth movement? Are they going to be able to take that next step with a veteran piece like an Erica Wheeler and find themselves in a 9 seed at the end of the season? That's probably a big jump for where they're at right now, but it's possible. Or are they just going to kind of continue to say it's that building block? I'm looking for the Fever to take at least, like, when it's all said and done, if they are at that 9-10 spot, that's a successful season. That's what I think right
Yeah.
now. Um, Seattle Storm, huge question mark. So yeah, I mean, I've never felt like I had this many question marks headed into a season. I mean, because think about it, the coaching changes. Half the league felt like there was a coaching change. I mean, we were so used to going into a season and knowing, hey, the Connecticut Sun were going to look this way. The Aces were going to look this way. The Mystics were going to look this way. And Minnesota is going to look this way. Phoenix is going to look that way. I mean, and then the bottom tier teams, you kind of sat there and questioned what does that look like? It's really across the board. So that's the biggest point that I just keep coming back to. As we head into opening day tomorrow, I'm just so excited to just finally see the product and have a somewhat of a semblance of an idea of what we can look forward to.
I know what I look for in opening weekend, right? In the first, I say the first 3 games are kind of a litmus test, figure out where you are, what's going on. Like 2 preseason games, like the amount of length that the camp is. Like, I know everyone likes to say, you know, 2 weeks of camp is a long time and blah 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 blah. But like, I'll be real, the roster gets whittled down. So let's say as of today, right? Last day to make cuts. As of last night, 8 teams had set rosters. That means for like what, a day and a half? Excuse me, a day and a half. These game day rosters are actually practicing together. Now, I don't know what's going on in camp. Maybe they're getting more runs together. I would assume so. But still, like, we can talk about camp being short, talk about the fact that now we're throwing together these groups of people and saying, hey, you're a team. Now let's go run it after like 1 or 2 days together as a solidified team with that that security. So for me, it's just like the first 3 games are very much so like, let me see let me see how these questions are answered. Kind of, what direction is this team going in? Are they headed in the right direction, or are they just trying to dig themselves out of a hole?
Yeah, I think you're able to look at a few things. One, just types of action, style of play, the things that have really been emphasized the last week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it's been. You know, just product on the floor, style of play. A lot of new coaches. So what does that look like? What is a Steph White system in Connecticut? What's that going to look like? What is a Patricia Trammell system going to look like in Dallas? And yeah, we did get a peek at that with the preseason game, but you still have to. Those are tough. So I think from a style of play and a philosophy standpoint, that's what I'm looking at. But also, let's not forget that all these however many past years we were headed into this opening weekend and Courtney Vandersloot wasn't there. Whoever wasn't there, half of these stars were still over in Europe. So there is a prioritization aspect of this where we're going to see more complete rosters right off the bat, which has an immediate impact for these teams long term. There are some players, there are some question marks. We talk about Gabby Williams, some players kind of going back and forth. Like who will be here for a couple weeks, then they'll go back to Europe, and then they'll rejoin the team. So there are isolated incidents where there is going to be some ebb and flow, but this is going to be one of the first times we're seeing more complete teams right off the bat, and that's exciting. I mean, I could debate the prioritization clause and rule for back and forth for 1,000 different reasons, whether I agree with it, whether or not. But from a fan's perspective, from a WNBA product perspective, from the WNBA side of things, I think it's a positive for this weekend, just being able to see complete teams. The superstars are here. They're not finishing up their seasons over in Europe. They've been together in camp. There is more consistency from that standpoint. So I'm looking towards that as well.
I love it. Let's do some bold predictions. I'm going to make some crazy statements, okay? The Washington Mystics in opening weekend play the New York Liberty and the Connecticut Sun. Now, tell me, I know this is a hot take, but you know what? It's preseason bold predictions. It's my last chance to make like the craziest predictions.
God,
I'm going.
Pick them this early on.
Oh, first of all, we will be doing pick. This is bold predictions. We're not even at pick 'em yet, Rachel. No, bold predictions, which kind of gives leeway to my pick 'em, because we're only going to do pick 'em for opening night. And then every episode, whatever the most recent game or the most upcoming game.
And I'm pretty sure I'm like 6-0 in pick 'em the last 6 years. Just so you know.
I freaking hate you. One year I was beating you all year, and then the last day of games you like beat me by one game or some bullshit. Excuse my language. Whatever. Last year you destroyed me. Fair. You had an early lead, and then I just had to do some really crazy takes to try and catch up. Yeah. All right. My bold prediction is the Washington Mystics go undefeated in opening weekend. That means on Friday night they beat the Liberty, and then on Sunday afternoon they beat the Mystics. They beat the Sun.
I don't even think that's that bold.
I think for a lot of
he's ready to crown New York, which I understand that too, but like it's got to come together. I've got to see it, and it could take some time. You do have much more consistency, and with Elena Deladon healthy and this team playing, like they're not going to come limping into this thing. I don't even think that's that bold of a take. I don't.
What about this bold take? The Phoenix Mercury play the LA Sparks at freaking 11 p.m. Eastern for Brittany Griner's first game back. Throw all the shade at the league. I don't care. You swap that game. You do something different because millions of people want to watch that game, and you just fumbled the snap on that. Then they play on Sunday the Chicago Sky at 4 p.m. Crazy take, and I actually think is the crazy take. The Mercury will not win opening weekend. They will go 0-2 in opening weekend, losing to LA Sparks. I just think early games have a lot of show for the coaching staff and what they did in preparation, and I got to give the edge to Kurt and James over Nygaard.
Okay.
Even though I think I think the Mercury are a better roster than the Chicago Sky and a better roster than the LA Sparks.
Mercury's always one of those teams too where, again, last year it was like, just throw it away. Just literally throw it away. Please. God, don't let me relive that. But there are one of those
Rachel, you want a reality TV show documentary regaling all of the amazing drama.
I don't. I really don't. No one does. But I do think some of that carries over, and I do think I could see Phoenix hitting their stride like after the like kind of going back and forth and teetering and messing around, and Taurasi's sitting out a few games and blah 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 blah. But I think Griner will be dominant, but it will take time for her to get her rhythm. Has not played the circumstances. The last year and a half, unbelievable. I do think there'll be some serious nervous jitters, but she'll be up an MVP conversation this year. Mark my word.
I completely agree with that. My early MVP picks, if I had to pick, and I think our incredible writer Donnie Bar-Lavi posted a Winsidr Bets article the other day, basically stating if they were going to put money down, it's on Delhi or BG
Sure.
because you're going to get now. Granted, if you're smart, you go with whichever team you think is going to be a top two team because historically in the W, you
Right.
don't win MVP unless you're a top two team. That said, I don't. That's why I don't think BG will win it this year. Other than if she's putting up good enough stats, I think it's gonna be really hard for voters to vote against her, given the whole story. But
But then
whatever.
playing devil's advocate with myself, it is that's a big expectation, right? From
Yeah,
what how she played in 2021 to now 2023. You don't
yeah,
just ease into that. You don't just
yeah.
like turn that back on. That will take time. So I agree. I think
Hundo.
Phoenix could hit a bunch of roadblocks early on. It will not surprise me. It will not worry me because this is a team historically that finds their stride middle end of the season. They find that pot of
Even
love.
without Sandy,
Yeah,
for
they get that emotion. They start rolling. They're playing together. I think we'll see that type of a semblance of team this year.
but I do think an interesting aspect is going to be the Phoenix Mercury, to your point, have always historically been that team that, finds its stride late, kind of lives to be called to be the underdog and to have stuff written about them. I think it's going to be a shift and an interesting shift to see this team no longer be the underdogs in the sense of people want BG to win and people want to see her doing good back. And so I think there's definitely going to be a difference
Yeah.
in relation to past seasons, just in that regard.
And I predict a much more cohesive team, even with Nygaard still at the helm.
Yes.
I think because you've got the Griner effect, and like, how does that not just bring a team together? And
Yeah.
the emotion surrounding that, and the passion surrounding that. Like, if I'm her teammate, man, I'm ready to run through a brick wall every single night.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I think it'll be really fun to watch Phoenix, and they're a dangerous team. That's a team that can beat anyone probably any given night, or they could lose to anyone any given night. Like it's they're always fascinating. To talk about Phoenix in this light.
Opening night pick'em, Rachel. We're at that point.
Oh God. Oh God.
Are
Okay.
you ready?
First game we've got Connecticut Sun, Indiana Fever. I'm going Connecticut.
Same. I don't think Fever win this um, opening weekend. Liberty at Mystics. I'm going DC.
I'll go New York. Are you writing these down?
Yeah, I got it. Don't worry.
Don't be cheating over there, man. Don't
You
be.
don't hear the clickety click click. Um, Sky at Lynx, third game of the night. I'm gonna let you go first because here's the thing. It's always the biggest struggle when I'm picking Lynx games because I view them so closely. I personally, I think after just watching the preseason game the other day in Canada, shout out to Canada, they did that right. I'm not giving the W credit for that. I'm giving Canada the credit for that because as we know from All Star, the W does a certain amount of things and expects the host city to do the majority of things, and it comes down to what the host city is willing to do. And I think Canada knocked it out of the park,
Yeah.
similar to Vegas, similar to Chicago
Totally.
when they did All Stars. I'm going Minnesota just because, assuming Fee will be back, Milic will be back, and I think also, I mean, I'll just say it. There's a lot of Twitter talk about some of the players on the Minnesota Lynx coming into that game that I think maybe distracted the team a little bit. Who knows? So I'm going Minnesota, even though I still think that they're not a playoff team.
I don't know. I don't know. It's like me versus you. My Sky versus the
You
Lynx.
got to go with them. You got to just
I mean,
go
at
with
this
them.
point, what's it really matter? Because I don't look forward to this game whatsoever. To be honest, I do, but it's just
No, I got you.
what is this gonna look like? I don't know. I'll go Chicago just to be different.
Cool. Phoenix Mercury at the LA Sparks.
You predicted LA.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that Phoenix catches lightning in a bottle. They come out hot. I'll just go opposite. Let's just go opposite on all the things for opening day.
Well, except Sun Fever. I think we're all.
But yeah.
um.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel, we have come to that point in the episode. Who's your goat?
Not answering.